Start again.
Right. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning for those the other way around, the other side of the Atlantic. Warm welcome to everybody for the 5th Nordic Tourism Collective event, and this one will be on sustainability. It's very, very important for the collective as our very DNA is sustainability. The very destination that we stand for is sustainability, and we felt it very important to have this important subject covered during the COVID crisis. But I'd like to first introduce you to our 5 fabulous experts that we have today from the industry. First, I'd like to introduce you to Helena Egan, who will wave, and she's the co-founder of PlanetEgan. Thank you, Helena. We also have Fabrice Sorin, who's the co-founder of Circular Economy 360 Alliance. Hello, Fabrice. We have Liisa Kokkarinen, who's project manager for Sustainable Arctic Destination at Visit Finland. Hi, Liisa. We have Tim Fairhurst, Secretary General of ETOA. Hi, Tim, welcome. And we have Signe Jungersted, who's CEO and founding partner at Group Now. Fabulous panelists, and welcome everybody. Just to say that in the last 10 minutes, we will be having questions for our experts. So please go ahead and post your questions on our chat, which you'll find on your screen. Anytime you want, have the questions, and we'll get them going in the final 10 minutes. Andy, over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So we're going to talk about sustainability today, and we firmly believe that sustainability should remain firmly on the agenda. It's sort of being kicked into the long grass a little bit at the moment due to the COVID and the crisis. But we are very focused on the growth and the encouragement of sustainable tourism. And as part of that, we are absolutely delighted to be working with both Business Finland and with Helsinki Marketing on an event later this year that aims to showcase sustainability in Finland. So I'm going to show you a very quick teaser video now for our event. It's only a minute or so long. We'll see how we get on with the technical side of it. But hope you enjoy it. It just gives you a flavour of what we're trying to do later this year and set the scene for the discussion over the next 40-45 minutes.
Impact on our nature, society and economy, leaving a low ecological footprint and honouring local cultures. Finland leads the way in living sustainably and in harmony with its environment. See for yourself, sustainability in action. The 9th through to the 11th of November 2020, the first ever carbon neutral tourism event. Hybrid with both physical and 2-day event to showcase, experience and discuss sustainability in Finland and across the region. Full-day conference, international keynote speakers on sustainability and opportunities for Finland and its Nordic partners, expert panel discussions, sustainable site visits, full-day B2B travel workshops for sustainable travel suppliers and international markets, and of course networking opportunities. So, save the date, Helsinki, 9th through to the 11th of November 2020. Visit our site to see any further details and to register your attendance. Organised in cooperation with Nordic Travel Solutions, Helsinki Marketing and Business Finland. We look forward to seeing you guys.
So there you go. That sets the scene. That's an event we have later this year. So we'll send you the link. The quality is a bit suspect on Zoom, but we'll send you the link. You can have a look at that, and we'll give you some more information as and when we have it. So welcome everybody. Maybe we could just go around the panel a little bit and just maybe everyone could introduce themselves and perhaps give us some introduction into your experience and your specialism in the area of sustainability. So Helena, perhaps we could start with you.
Sorry. If there's a lot of noise background, it's just someone outside. Yes, so I'm Helena Egan. I'm originally from Finland, and I've been in the industry for about 30 years. Started in Finland on cruise lines, Automobile Association, Visit Britain, then moved to Ireland, and from Ireland to London, and spent 17 years in London working for North Star Media Group, and my latest corporate role was the Global Director of Government and Industry Relations at TripAdvisor. And sustainability has been always very close to my heart. And since 3 years, I have been running my own consultancy called PlanetEgan. And the consultancy is all about sustainable and responsible growth in tourism and travel. And I was very excited to work with Liisa, and Liisa will be telling much more about the Arctic Sustainable Destination Finland. Work in that great program as well. I'm also a nomad, so and until about 3 months ago, when the virus hit, I was a traveling nomad. Right now, I'm a little bit more staying in one place nomad. But part of my life is to travel and sustainably and responsibly around the world and working in some projects. And I'm really looking forward to a great conversation today. I also sit on a board of Nordic Tourism Collective with Paul and Andy.
Thank you, Helena. Thank you very much. So Liisa, perhaps we could move over to you. Obviously, the clues in your job title a little bit, isn't it, about Business Finland, your sustainability?
Hi, and thank you. Let's continue with Finland then. So indeed, my name is Liisa Kokkarinen, and I represent most of all myself, but my organization is indeed Business Finland / Visit Finland, so the National Tourism Organization of Finland, and where I am heading our sustainable tourism program. I've been in the tourism industry the past 20 plus years. And a little bit like Helena, I was also a nomad, a little bit less time, some 12 years in the UK, US, Belgium, the Netherlands, always in the tourism industry. And the sustainability was kind of the red line there through everything I did. Until about 5 years ago, I moved to my favorite destination around the world, which is Finnish Lapland. So being based here the past 5 years, I had to go around the world to find my own place. But I'm also educated in sustainable development and Arctic matters. So I am certainly lucky that I can implement my educational background and my experience to the National Sustainable Tourism Project that we are at Visit Finland. Thank you, and hello also to everyone.
Thank you very much, Liisa. And Signe, good morning, good afternoon to you. You've joined us. You're a sort of familiar face on these Zoom webinars. Perhaps you could just give us all a little brief introduction to your background and your experience.
Yes, thank you very much. So my name is Signe, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Group Now. We've existed as that company for about a year. Before that, I was development director with Wonderful Copenhagen. So just going back a little bit to that, because that's very much also shaped what I work with today. And as the development director, I was responsible for the strategy back in 2017, which sort of declared the end of tourism as we know it and introduced this whole idea of localhood. And I think that in many ways was where it started for me, the personal journey towards focusing more and more also professionally on sustainable tourism development. We introduced the concept of people-based growth and very much focusing on the locals as well. And that's just built on, and that's basically what I do today as well. In Group Now, we work with and we advise destinations and also across sort of not just within tourism, but the broader experience economy on how to transform, how to innovate their businesses into more sustainable models, and not just environmental, but also social and economic sustainability. So yeah, I think that's the brief introduction to who we are.
Lovely, thanks very much. And talking about transformation, innovation, I'd like to introduce Fabrice, who's going to tell us a little bit about circular thinking. Fabrice.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Fabrice Sorin. Quick background: I've worked in the trade for the past 15 years in various roles in operation, commercial, product development, tour operators and DMCs and wholesalers. And like most of the panel, I've been around a bit. As we said earlier, I'm a recovering Londoner, back in Nantes now on the west coast of France. Since 2019, we provide consultancy services around the circular economy. And we founded the C360 Alliance, which is a network of independent consultants that is born out of the Circular Economy MBA program from Bradford University. So what we do is we work with the public and private organizations, and we look at how to set the circular transformation of their operations. I'm specifically focused on service industries, and if there's one industry that is exciting and ripe for innovation and change, that's the tourism industry. So it's exciting to be part of this panel and discuss where sustainability and circular economy can be deployed and implemented in this brand new world.
Thank you, Fabrice. And finally, but certainly not least, Tim, maybe perhaps you could give us a little introduction to your experience and what you're sort of getting involved in at the moment.
Sure, thank you, Andy. Good afternoon, everybody. The European Tourism Association, for those of you who don't know, is largely private sector, about 1,200 members currently. We're a very proud partner of NTC, also Group Now. Hello, Signe. We have about a quarter of our members who are buyers in Europe, so they're buying all sorts of services in the Nordic region, elsewhere in Europe, and about 3/4 of our membership are suppliers or indeed destination management organizations as well. So the part of ETOA I work with most is the policy side, and much of that now, in addition to the European perspective, is at the destination level. So I think what Signe was describing as people-based growth and just the relationship between the host community and tourism is something that's an increasing interest for us, and how to help support a creative dialogue between public sector and private sector is very much where we see the most sort of creative opportunities in tourism's development. So very pleased to join this afternoon's chat.
Thank you very much, Tim. Paul, over to you.
Super, thanks everybody, and let's get cracking with the first question, which I think is a very, very important one, and I think our audience will be very interested, is what will the dramatic effects of COVID-19, and they have been super dramatic as we know, what will it mean for the progress of sustainable practices in the Nordic region? Do you think, panel, that it will be an opportunity to stop and regroup and rebuild for a kind of more robust, sustainable future in terms of destination products? Or will the necessity to recover business as quickly as possible and survive mean there'll be a short, even mid-term drive just to get visitors back to the destinations at the expense of sustainability? How do you feel about that? And if I can start with you, Liisa.
Yeah, thank you. Very, very good question, and very, very timely question as well. And of course, we are yet to know the actual impacts that Corona will have in tourism industry in long term. But in my experience, this lockdown time has certainly provided a perfect platform to take some serious steps towards sustainability for the entire tourism industry, at least here in Finland. And at Visit Finland, we've been building our national sustainable tourism development program called Sustainable Travel Finland the past 2 years or so. And it was a total coincidence that we were launching this spring in the middle of Corona chaos, I would say. And the way this program has been received by the travel industry in Finland has been phenomenal. I don't think that I have ever seen as unified voice of the industry than this spring. I constantly hear that sustainability is our only way forward. And so people have really adapted this program really well, are really active in participating in the program and working towards the sustainability. And some feel that finally there is a time to do it. so that it's been in the agenda for a long time, but because tourism in the Nordic countries has been growing, there hasn't been really time to stop and develop. So it's not something that it's just now popped in the people's mind, but it's been in the back of the mind for many for a long time. But now, you know, you were kind of forced to stop and think. So I definitely believe that people, that now it's really the time that it's time to take this giant step towards sustainability. And I can only see the option that you introduced first, that out of these crises we come stronger and more sustainable.
Fantastic, Liisa, and it's very important to hear that from somebody that's personally involved in that process in Finland. So thank you very much for that angle. Can I maybe ask Fabrice now to what's your feeling on the effect of COVID on sustainability?
I think on a more general basis, it's a matter of time frame. The very short term, unfortunately, my personal opinion, that will be a pressure to go back to normal, because the financial pressure from operators, private operators, to survive is overweight the midterm and long-term viability of the whole sectors and their operation. This being said, operators, private operators, being hospitality, transports, actors that already started sustainable strategies, being in their procurement or in their market positioning, are very unlikely to go back and to renege on that. What will happen in the short term may be a pause in investment, because the survival priority, the financial survival of the operations, might take supersede, if you want, the investments in deeper sustainability strategies. But I don't think operators will go back. And specifically for the Nordics, if you look at Europe as a whole, this is a part of Europe that has been pioneering the sustainability movements, taking the hospitality segment, Scandic as being globally leading the whole sustainability in their operations, if you look at the whole hotel hospitality industries. So the arbitrage from a pure bottom line standpoint, the sustainability arbitrage is there, and I don't think it's not going to change and be reversed. So I think it's a matter of time frame again. In the short term, possibly there will be a pause in sustainable strategies and investments, but in the mid to long term, I don't think there's any way back, and sustainability is the only way forward anyway.
No going back. Thank you, Fabrice. Good to hear your view. Tim, could we have your view on this one, please?
Sure. I think my first reaction is it's not an either or. It's a little bit like when people talk about visa policy. You know, you can either have high levels of security or high levels of facilitation, and the answer is you can have both. I think we do need a return because it isn't just business. It's an awful lot of jobs which are currently in jeopardy currently. So finding a way of getting tourism moving again in a way that's responsible is very urgent from an economic and social perspective. I think the discussion about people, planet and profit here, there is certainly a lot of discussion about product diversification, and partly that's being driven by people's sense of what's safe, what's desirable, do I want to visit crowded places. So from the point of view of tourism's footprint and how it develops, we see there's quite a lot of opportunity around diversification, and there's a lot of appetite in the B2B world to have those sorts of conversations about what will the new product be. And certainly DMOs want to get in front of the private sector and start talking about the kinds of experiences that could develop and how they may evolve away from perhaps the most famous places. I think there's no question that consumers are going to be thinking differently. I think we're all more conscious of the footprint we have, and it's in business interest to provide product that match the values that clients have. So I would think the evolution will continue in that direction. The broader framing of this from an EU perspective is obviously very ambitious Green Deal goals, and the EU has already achieved its 2020 goals of being over 20% below 1990 levels. And I think the Green Deal will be highly influential in how tourism develops. So I think sustainability from an environmental perspective will be baked in from a policy point of view. And then the creative challenges are around making sure tourism develops in a socially sustainable way, so host communities really buy in. So I think lots of possibilities there.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Tim. Some great points. Signe, can we ask for your view on this one?
Yes, thank you, Paul. Yeah, so I think, well, I don't actually disagree with anyone, which of course makes for a boring conversation, but that's how it is. But I agree with Fabrice that there is a time issue, and with Tim as well, that there's a bleeding industry, of course, and lots of lost jobs. But I also, when we were talking about this question beforehand, I was also challenging a little bit. I think there's what I hope for, and then there's what we see happening, and I think that's why it's really important. I mean, the future doesn't just happen; it's also something we create and we influence it, and that's why we're having these discussions and this conversation now, and that's why I think it's very important to keep having these conversations on how do we actually, now the buzzword is build back better, and how do we ensure that sustainable and sustainability keeps being at the very top of our agendas and our priorities. And I think from what I've seen, I mean, here in Denmark and a lot of different places, I've seen a discussion on, are we going back to normal, or is it going to be a new normal? And we really want to predict what's going to happen. And there is, and I think that's very natural, a hope to regain what has been lost and sort of go back to normal because it feels more familiar. But we've experienced a huge change, a major disruption in our industry. And I think there's no way we're going back to anything. We're going forward. And now the job is to make that new normal also the new possible, the new better. So I think, but there is an urgency to rebuilding, right? So we do see loads of funds going into campaigning to regain what has been lost, to attract. We're back to the war rhetorics of fighting for the tourists. And from my point of view, we really need to introduce sustainability into the discussion, because I do feel that it's getting lost a little bit in there, in that urgency to rebuild and to regain. But I also think that in time we'll realize that things have changed, and so we need to reinvent the business model. We need it to. I agree with Fabrice, of course, because I think we all agree here that sustainability is the only way forward. But now I think there's also going to be sort of a different urgency in terms of reinventing our business models, because we'll have like what I call the limited edition, right? We won't be able to maximize the crowds, the number of visitors. There will be a different number of travelers, and the travelers will, as Tim also say, have a different mindset. We've experienced what really matters, and so value-based travel, transformative travel will become a thing in the future. And so we need to reinvent, how do we make that business as well for the industry? How do they make money from quality and not quantity? And so I think this is the way forward that we'll see, and the innovative will win, I think. So I think my answer to the question is, there is a time issue, but there's also the importance of keep insisting on having this conversation. And in terms of investments, we need to invest in that innovation, in that development, and not only in regaining what has been lost, but in building back better.
Very clear, very well put. Thank you, Signe, that's excellent. And finally, if you could put the final words on this one, Helena, for us.
So I should now disagree with everyone, because that would make it more interesting. But I can't. But I think I'm kind of a lot of the same points as we already emailed about before, and what everyone's thinking. But I think the beauty of this is that now the need and the urge for people traveling is much more towards nature, off the beaten path. So there's a lot of push from the travelers' perspective as well, that nature is more important, and I think that should help push businesses towards the right direction. One thing, I'm being based in Spain right now, and watching the amount of we have to wear plastic gloves everywhere and masks, and the amount of plastic gloves and masks I pick up on the beach on my walks. Restaurants no longer can have the olive oil bottles or the vinegar bottles on the table, so you get these little plastic single packs. They are everywhere. and I was thinking, I think the innovation is now is time for it, because we need urgently technology companies and companies to come up with these solutions, because the small businesses are doing what they're told to be doing. In here, you go for a coffee or a beer, they put €1 in your bill, so you pay an extra euro for everything, because they expect the consumers to take the hit, because they have to buy the disinfectants. And I could go on to this. There's quite a lot of kind of first-hand things that I see, that I think that there are new challenges coming in. So the movement was already towards the right direction. And I totally agree. This is the time. I mean, everyone's talking about the clear waters of Venice, and I mean, not seeing planes, and what a difference it's made to some cities in Asia where they've never seen clear skies. I was speaking to a friend from Dubai. He's never seen starry skies in the middle of Dubai, but a couple of weeks they had their lockdown, that was the case. So I think if there is a real need and urge for organizations, for DMOs like this in Finland to work with the small suppliers, because like Signe was saying, they need the business. It's otherwise they'll be out of the business. So the finding the right balance, I think, is a really exciting time, and it's a time for a lot of innovation to come into the picture and help to really develop to the it's not a niche. Sustainable travel is not a niche. It's the only way. It's a reality, and it's the only way we can survive on this planet, and that's what we all have to be pushing for.
Thanks, Helena. Very well put. I think you can hear from all the panelists how passionate we are, and the Nordics is in general, about making sure that this agenda, that the sustainability part of it, is very much at the forefront, despite all the challenges that we're currently having. So thanks for a very interesting discussion on that. Andy, over to you.
Well, I was going to move on to ask Tim a question about the EU, actually. You gave a sort of overview of the thinking in terms of the funding and the strategy moving forward. Is there any specifically within that, any sort of talk about the harmonization of transportation within the EU with respect to sustainability? By that, I mean, for example, I know that airlines talking to train companies and making the tickets interchangeable, for example. Do you know if there's any of that sort of discussion going on? Because that seems like a step in that sort of general sustainable direction to me.
Yeah, I think behind the scenes there's lots of discussion about, well, two issues that address that. One, end-to-end ticketing. So can you get from your door to wherever it is you're going through various modes of transport, and can an agent sell you, or can a website sell you a ticket that covers all elements of that in a seamless way? And there's lots of discussion about intermodal connectivity. So how easy is it to go from a bus to a train in a way that's safe, easy to understand, convenient, and all of those sorts of things. So general collaboration from the point of view of urban access and intracity is certainly discussed. But I think that brings us to a sort of very important aspect to this discussion is tourism doesn't sit to one side as a phenomenon. It's very, very tightly integrated into strategic planning. And I think if there is something to be taken from the current crisis, and goodness knows there's not much that's positive, it is a very, very strong political realization that tourism is very integrated into transport and supply systems, so that any big investment, any plans for the future, how to build back better, needs to take into account how it integrates with everything from platform regulation to better transport policy. So this is a very, very cross-cutting industry. And if you're going to build back sustainably, then any funding instruments and any policy incentives need to take into account a very holistic approach. So I think from an EU perspective, the short answer is yes, the mood music is about better strategic integration, but the devil will be in the detail, both in terms of the types of funding instruments that there are, whether it's through general funds or whether it's through sector-specific funds. Is it grant? Is it loan? Is it administered regionally, nationally? All those sorts of questions still to be worked out. But I think the prospects of there being a serious financial intervention whose purpose is intended to have a sustainable consequence, I think the chances of that are good. Therefore, this is a great opportunity to be having discussions about how to apply that money and how to maximize the benefit from it.
Cheers, Tim. Thank you very much. Liisa, perhaps I could just move on to you. You proudly telling us how wonderful Finland is leading the way as a vanguard of sustainability. Are there any specific examples you could perhaps give us, or anything you could share with us as to what has actually been done in practical terms to move this forward?
Yeah, thank you. And it's very nice to set us to be leading the way. Well, from our behalf, as a practical example, I can mention this program Sustainable Travel Finland, which we just recently launched. And we have now around 400 tourism companies with us on this sustainable development path. And among them are restaurants, cafe, small activity providers, all sorts of accommodation providers, ferry companies, and so forth. So it's a very, very wide variety of companies. And actually, it's not even the lack of concrete examples that these companies are taking towards sustainability. But what we have noticed that what is the challenge is to put it in wording. Basically, it seems to be that it's in the DNA. It's a thing that, you know, this is ethically correct. This is the way how I look. I consider my neighbor, or I consider the environment where I operate. So of course I do it in this way, but it's never been organized or systematic. The word. It's never been looked from the sustainability lens. It's just the right thing to do. And therefore, I would think that one of our challenges has been really to put it in writing, what the companies are doing, those concrete examples, those concrete steps that they are doing, and communicate about it. Because it's just something that comes from your backbone. And then it's been very difficult to actually to tell someone that, yeah, I take this action towards sustainability. But like Helena mentioned earlier, that with this COVID-19 discussion, the nature is now playing a really big role, that the travelers are looking to nature, the pure, clean nature, that is something that we are inclined to experience. And at least here in Finland, we also know that after the corona, people really find their nearest forest once again. When you weren't able to travel the forest further away, you found the trees nearby you, which is pretty easy, since on average every Finn lives approximately 200 meters from the closest forest. So it's easy for us. But I think that it's also this care that it's the care that we have shown for the environment, especially, and us being the people who actually live in this environment, has made Finnish people to be like that, to kind of like naturally sustainable, because we are depending. It's the forests that are providing us the food as well as the well-being. Especially now with the COVID-19, we've seen the importance of nature as a source of well-being. So maybe this is also the push that has been for the tourism companies, that why they really now want to proactively work towards sustainability, and also to be recognized. So even if it's earlier been somewhere that, yes, of course we do it in this way, and this is the sustainable way, now also wanting to be recognized. And this is now that we have this Sustainable Travel Finland label, that we can actually award those companies that overgo the entire program and be in this way then recognized as a sustainable operator. And also that we do see that after this COVID-19, it's the sustainability and the need for it is not going to go away. It's going to be even more important. Even if the future traveler doesn't necessarily require for it, it will be the national politics that or the governments who are requiring it, or the tour operator who is requiring it. So the requirements will certainly go up. I don't know if this really answered your question, Tom.
I'm not sure it has either, but thank you very much for that. I think I've got a couple of questions which I'll leave to the end on the balance between a supplier drive to sustainability and a consumer drive to sustainability, and where they sort of meet and what the conflicts are there. I'd just like to ask Signe a quick question, because I know based in Denmark, I mean, sustainability is also the backbone of the Danish society, and it's sustainability in a way of work-life balance and gender balance and all that. That's all sort of rolled into the same thing. I know when wonderful Copenhagen, for example, had a thing about balancing the tourists with the locals who live there. And is that just an example of how things should work in the future?
Well, yes, I do think it is. I think it is. But what I think is very exciting now is that we've all, I mean, it's nice to have, I mean, I'm based in Copenhagen, so I like to highlight Copenhagen and Denmark, of course, but I think it's a situation we're all in. We've been discussing this across Europe and across the world, I think, for quite some years. The issues of over-tourism, issues of tourism's increasingly negative impact on destinations, on local lives, on the agenda of sustainability. And I think now is a moment of credibility. I think now is when we show for real that we actually mean what we say, and that we are prepared to act upon it. Because I think it will be extremely difficult after having talked about it for a couple of years, then something like this happens. And then if we don't act upon it, if we don't keep the direction that we were going in before, we will have no credibility coming out in 2 years and saying, oh, by the way, yes, sustainability. It doesn't work like that. I think there's an interesting example, which is not related to sustainability, but there was this platform launched in the UK called Did They Help?, where you can search all these different brands. It's slightly uncomfortable and very, very exhibiting. But I think, it kind of tapped into what my point is saying, this is the point where you prove your relevance as a product, as a service, as a provider, as a destination, or whatever you represent. This is the time where you actually prove that you have a relevant role to play in the future of tourism as well, and in the future of tourism in communities and in societies and in building economies and so on. So the answer is yes, but I think this is also a moment of truth in many ways, just to put pressure on people. That's
fine, Signe. Cool. Any questions?
Yeah, just a last couple of questions for Fabrice and Helena. Helena, it's about this. Is there a real, would you say, pan-Nordic approach to sustainability? We know these fantastic work which Liisa's working on in Finland, and we know Copenhagen and Sweden and Norway have their own agendas. But do you think there is a pan-Nordic approach, and should there be a pan-Nordic approach? Helena, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think right now it would be a really good moment to have it, because like you said, each country has their own programs which are really important, and of course, I mean, each CMO, each national tourism organization is there to support their local businesses, and that connection is the most vital. But I was I looked at the Nordic Council of Ministers, and they do have this Nordic Clean Oceans program, which a lot of the governments, all the governments are part of, and to have that kind of initiative coming from maybe that direction or other initiative, cross-governmental initiative for the Nordics, I think this would be a really good time to do it, because you could basically take the individual elements from the country-specific programs, and the countries are quite similar, and you could build something that would be the baseline, if we could, whatever you want to call it, I don't know, the baseline of the Nordic sustainability, and that would be just the first step. And everyone would have to reach that, and then they could go up and beyond it. Because like Tim was saying earlier, the interesting thing is the reputation of the Nordic countries is extremely good and extremely high on sustainability. And when we were working with Visit Finland, with Liisa, on asking people's opinion, a lot of people said this was industry leaders and tour operators, and were saying that yes, they think Nordics are sustainable, but they couldn't really pinpoint any proof on that. So I think across Nordic, not another kind of label that you have to be paying for, because I think we're all tired of those, that there's another certification, another label, another, but driving to maybe more collective good would help, especially on the long haul marketing and positioning the Nordics as really driving the sustainability, rather than individual countries pushing that. And I think NTC has also a role to play in this.
Absolutely, I fully agree with you on that, and it's something that we will be following up in future events that we'll be having on sustainability. It's really the critical time, no doubt about it. And Fabrice, final question, because we've got a couple of questions that have been asked from the audience, and we'll get onto them after this. But how's your feeling about a pan-Nordic approach? And do you believe, being a circular economy expert, that the real sustainable products, destinations, the cities should be the ones who will be acquiring the EU funding? Should the green element be the dominant factor in terms of recovery funds and moving the sustainability forward?
In terms of the funding, I guess it depends what are the strings attached to it. As Tim hinted, the tourism is such a complex and large industry. It touches basically every single sector, from construction, transport, agriculture. So you can argue that indirectly there is a lot of funding for sustainable production and consumption being directed via other sectors, such as bioeconomy or regenerative agriculture, and this will feed at some point into green sourcing of food that then will get distributed into restaurants and hotels and etc. So you can argue that indirectly there are funding mechanisms in place already from the EU that are dripping into tourism operators. As for the coordination, as Helena mentioned, the Nordic Council of Ministers and Nordic Council, there's a lot of key subjects where you have close cooperation. What you don't have is an explicit tourism cooperation angle to it. So if you go and look on the publication from Northern, you have again transport, bioeconomy, industries, and etc. But you don't have a dedicated tourism as an industry, cross-national cooperation body. So maybe that is something that's missing. And this is really complex due to the very nature of the industry, because again, there is funding being directed through other sectors that then find their way into tourism operators.
Absolutely. Thanks, Fabrice. Very good point as well. It's so intertwined, our industry, with everything else, but is there really a real tourism focus pan-Nordic wise? And I think that's something that we'll be bringing up very, very much in the future. Andy, over to you on the first question. You're muted.
Sorry, I've been polite. I've got a question on the subject of, and I'm going to be slightly controversial here. I'm just going to throw it out there, and someone might want to pick this up and answer it. But this, taking on Signe's point about the fact that all businesses have to reinvent their business models, and we're looking for quality, not quantity, and we're looking at reducing our impacts, etc., etc. Are we in danger of the tourism industry becoming elitist? Are we in danger of the tourism industry being something that can only be afforded by people who have money to do it, because we're restricting the supply? We're talking about reducing the numbers of people to various places. We're talking about reducing entrances here and there. Is that something that, and I read recently that all the TUI flights to Malaga this week are all full. So the Germans are flying to Malaga in their droves. But if we're talking about trying to look at quality, not quantity, is that are we shooting ourselves in the foot a little bit, or is that something that we shouldn't be too worried about? I don't know who wants to take that. Anyone wants to comment on that? Go and see.
I'll jump in just to start with. I mean, I suppose my first observation, Andy, would be we've got to remember this is a demand-led industry. So, we could have happy ideas from a destination perspective all day long, but unless people are actually choosing to spend the money, in their source markets, that they're not coming. But I think that your point about elitism and inclusion is well made, but it's worth digging into exactly what the visitor economy is. I think one of the observations we would have with the current pivot to the domestic market is that it is driving a lot of innovation, or it should be, and if it's not, get innovating, because we now have to sell to our neighbors rather than people who are coming from further away. So we're seeing, and again, I'm not an expert on regions, so forgive this as a general remark, but we're definitely picking up elsewhere in Europe that people are creating new product that's designed for people who come from that place. So it's a way of unpacking and representing destinations in a way that's expressly designed for the community. And I think one of the observations we'd have as far as grounds for optimism is that it's that kind of product which operators really want to sell, because it's the things that the locals want to do. And the less, if you like, synthetic the product is, the better it's going to be integrated into what the community does. You'll have all heard Signe talk about the dual use aspects of tourism. It's not something that's only for visitors, it's something for the community as well. And the community is making day excursions. It's visiting its museums and parks, using bike paths that overnight tourists may end up using as well. So I think, it could well be that some of the best opportunities are start small and get creative and see what that leads to in terms of product.
Thank you. I think, Signe, you want to say a couple of words?
Yeah, I wanted to, to tap into what Tim was saying as well, but I think we should also just all remember that tourism is elitist, and it has been, the wealthy middle class of Western world, and, we don't actually represent the entire world, so the people who have traveled are elitist, even if they don't feel like it. But I think elitist is not the same as exclusive, and there are different ways of doing this. And I think, Tim, you also mentioned product diversification. We're talking about hybrid events. You can do hybrid products. Museums and attractions, they've activated a whole new target group by being more digital during the crisis. How do they continue activating that target group after the crisis? It doesn't have to be in the museums. Maybe it's within Animal Crossings games and whatnot. There are many different opportunities to diversify. And just as a fun little example, and I think all the Danish in here will recognize this, that one of the most elitist restaurants in Copenhagen, the Noma, which is very, very difficult to get a table at, and which of course has mostly, or at least a lot of international visitors. They've been struggling throughout this, of course, as most of the restaurant business has. And they came out now and sort of reverted to doing the Noma burger for a limited time. But there's been hours of queuing outside Noma to get the burger. So I think that's going from elitist to very, very local community, very non-elitist. But it's been a huge success. And one of the reasons it's been a huge success is that it hasn't been elitist, but it's been exclusive. So we all knew it was for a limited time. Everyone wanted to try the Noma burger. So, yeah.
Great one, thanks. And I've got a question that's just coming from the audience, and it's related to your elitist part. And the question is, how can we make sustainable products and experiences and adventures more accessible to a wider target group, also in the means of cost and pricing? Many of our Nordic sustainable products are for high-end target groups at the moment. Maybe this is something that, Liisa, I don't know if it's something that you've been working on, or is this a fair comment, or is this harsh?
I know it is a fair comment in the way that I think that's the main mindset there, that it is. People always think that sustainability comes with an extra cost, and this is an issue we need to tackle because we are in this shift from making sustainability to go from niche to mainstream. And if I look at these first companies who've been awarded with Sustainable Travel Finland label, they certainly are not high-end products or high-end tourism service providers. So I think that in the coming months, we will be able to show that, you know, now we have a tool that how we can recognize a sustainable Finnish tourism operator, and we can showcase that its sustainability doesn't necessarily mean that there is an extra price tag on it. But I also a little bit, if I just may want to comment on the earlier question, what there was about this like a pan-Nordic sustainability approach, because what we have now realized that there is a lot of projects going on in sustainability, at least in Finland, both private, both public, and with most of the public ones, we have very strong collaboration. We're making sure that we're going all towards the same goal, that, you know, that we are not duplicating the work, but we are all supporting each other's work, and this has been great. But now there is also coming more and more private businesses who are seeing that there is economic chance to make sustainability a business, but they are not necessarily applying the same criteria for the sustainability. So there is a small risk that we are kind of like, you know, the message, the sustainability is becoming distorted for the audience. Because, you know, if one company is saying that this is sustainable and another organization saying, don't, this is sustainable tourism. And then I think that we're watering down the message. And again, we might be in the place where we think that sustainability comes with an extra price tag, or that it's just, you know, no one is anymore sure that what does it mean to be a Nordic sustainable tourism company. So this was a little bit off the topic because I wanted to mention the previous question, but I think that it was related to this question as well.
Incredibly, Liisa, the final question that came from the audience was exactly that. So you've almost preempted it. So maybe to the others, we can end on this last question, which is about this potential clash of interests from the public sector, destinations, etc., and the private ones, because this will event, and maybe Finland is an example of a more harmonious environment, I would say, than many other countries. So maybe some of the other panel can maybe give their context on this. Liisa's very clear on hers. Is there a need for closer dialogue between the private sector and the public sector in this case? And how can we best facilitate this, enhance this quickly now, because this needs to be done now? Because I think actually in some parts of the Nordics, this is actually a real problem. Anybody want to take that one first?
I think there is obviously a need for a much deeper and long-term collaboration and product co-creation and value co-creation between the public and the private. But there's one point that tends to be under-mentioned is the framing. A destination has to be framed as an asset, as not as a commodity. If the public and the private operators both understand and acknowledge a destination is an asset, it has limits, it has carrying capacities limitation, then how the public and the private create and co-create products, the logic changes, because an asset has to be maintained, it has to be protected, it has to be optimized for the public and the private operator. So we tend to underestimate the power of the framing of the situation. So again, something that we do insist from a circular economy viewpoint. If one starts to frame the destination as an asset, then the logic changes. It's not public versus private. It's not private operators wanting to fight off taxes that would negatively impact their short-term profitability. It's about acknowledging, okay, we have to co-create something that works long-term. So I'm not saying it's easy, but when we change the framing, it changed the logic of the discussion as to what is tourism, what are the impacts, what should we bring by bringing tourists.
Excellent. Helena and Tim. Helena, can I come to you first?
Yeah, just very briefly. I think the whole public-private partnership conversation has been going on for ages, and I think it's really shocking that it still isn't happening. And was recently in the UNWTO event, and there was a voting from the member countries, and each and every single one of them voted and said this is even more shockingly at the time like COVID-19 that has somehow been lost. And I think that's the most sustainable way forward, is that you work together in partnerships, because like Liisa was saying, if there are 10 smaller programs all over the place working on a very similar goals as Business Finland, Visit Finland is already, and I'm sure this happens in other countries and other industries as well. So I think that should be the absolute bottom line, is that connection is there, the public-private partnerships, and that communication is openly there, because that's the only way you can avoid and you can avoid overlap and work together sustainably.
Excellent, thank you. And final words to you, Tim, on this one.
Well, I suppose my observation was going to be, if you're looking for conflict, just look inside the public sector. It's not between public and private. So one of the biggest obstacles is getting people within the public sector to understand the need for strategic coordination, whether it's in the interest of tourism or transport or anything else. And it's quite often the case that, if you like, someone who's most tourism literate doesn't really have the ear of people whose budgets and decision making affect what tourism does. So I think there are huge opportunities just in the public sphere on that front. But just on a framing thing, and just to pick up some of Fabrice's very good donut economics there, it's a little bit like the difference between tax relief and tax justice. It is how you put something. And I think one of the big opportunities around public-private collaboration is tourism does want to make a positive contribution. It's not there to be some kind of oppressive parasite. So if it has an opportunity to make a contribution that is valued, enjoyed by the visitors and the community, maybe there's a way of reframing, whether it's the whole tourism tax debate or in other ways in which tourism spend contributes to something that's worth having and sustainable in community. There is certainly an opportunity to reset that dialogue and get more out of it.
Excellent. Thanks, Tim. I mean, I think we could probably talk about this for a lot longer, and that's why we're going to continue having discussions and events built around this, because there really is so much that we need to be discussed and need to discuss now. So I'd like to pass it over to Andy to conclude it for us.
Well, yeah, I'd just like to say thank you, everyone. There's so much to talk about here. We could be here all day, and sustainability means so much things, so much different things to so many different people. But I think actually your comments, Tim, were very good at the end. I think that sort of puts things in a very positive framework as to what we should be doing and the direction we should be going, and how we should sort of face this looking forward. So just to say thank you to everyone. Thank you to Liisa, thank you to Fabrice, thank you to Tim, thank you to Signe, and thank you to Helena. And thank you very much for a great discussion, and I wish you all a great day.
Thanks, everybody. It'll be recorded, and we'll use this because this conversation will go a long way. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you.